No problem. Alhamdulillah. نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن سار سبيله إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So today inshallah ta'ala that after ending the month of Ramadan, that today being the first Jummah after the ending of Ramadan, that today normally we have a lesson in Muqtasa Sahih Bukhari, but due to the circumstance that today we'll try to cover one of the masail or one of the masala or qadiyya that relates to some of the ahkam that comes after Ramadan, which is the discussion regarding the ahkam, the rulings of Siyam Sit min Shawaal. So what's the ahkam or what have been discussed by the ulama regarding fasting the 6 days of Shawaal. So we are still in the month of Shawaal, the first few days of Shawaal, the first week of Shawaal. So what have been discussed by the ulama have been written regarding fasting these days of Shawaal and the different ahkam that pertain to it. So as for this matter regarding ahkam Siyam Sit min Shawaal is a matter being covered by the ulama of past and also of present. So find of the ulama of present day have discussed and written on this topic, and also find some of the ulama of the past also have discussed this particular matter. And so you have various rasail books that have written specifically on this particular topic. So we'll use one of them as our main reference, but we'll kind of somewhat at times mention others. So regarding concerns, so to give us a backdrop regarding some of the rasail or different works on this. So these are considered to be these type of masail. We find that it is that concerns the masala is a specific topic that the ulama have given some attention. So you have many works. So you have, for example, so you have some of those who have approached the topic by way of more so looking at the hadith and discussing more by way of hadith, by giving the hadith and then discuss the masail that relates to it. So first gathering the hadith that have been mentioned relating the hadith relating to Shawaal, fasting Sit min Shawaal. So discuss those hadith, then discuss the masail relating to it. Then others have discussed by way of refutation, where you find that one of the ulama of the Hanafiya that they have written this particular one. So for example, matters relating to the hadith that relates to Shawaal, are they authentic or not? So you find concerning Alahi Ashafi rahimahullah ta'ala, who died 761, that he also Alai, one of the ulama of hadith, or one of the ulama also have worked in hadith and other topics, that he wrote this, which is a refutation regarding a matter regarding discussing a hadith that relates to Shawaal, or the authentic or not. So he kind of somewhat mentioned the hadith, then went through the discussion regarding looking at the hadith. So this is more like a hadithiyya. So it's more concerned like in a hadith, takhrij of those hadith relating to Shawaal. Then you find another work that on this topic, that I also find that a little risala that have been written that discuss what a person could gather, all those who have written on this topic of the ulama of past and also of present. So also this another work that is understood that is called concerning, so the work of Alai rahimahullah ta'ala is called Raf al-Ishkal and Siyam Sit Ayyam min Shawaal. So can somewhat to remove the ishkal, that doubt that some may have regarding fasting these 6 days of Shawaal, based upon they criticize the authenticity of the hadith and say all those hadith are daif. Then also you have another one, which is Tahrir al-Maqal fi Sawm al-Sit min Shawaal, and this is written by the ulama of the Hanafi, which is Qutlu Bugha. So one of the ulama that have written regarding from the Hanafi, that he refute another Hanafi that kind of somewhat have written regarding fasting these days. So you have mentioned, so he kind of somewhat refute that Hanafi on this particular matter regarding some of the view that he has mentioned regarding where he discussed concerning of those views regarding that fasting in the Fuqaha al-Hanafi, that some of mentioned that it is something which is, they mentioned it is something which is makruh. So they mentioned Rad ad-Da'wa, Karahiyat, wa Itbat, Istihbab, Sawm, Sit min Shawaal. So he discussed different masail based upon one of the Mashaykh of the Hanafi who somewhat refute this matter regarding fasting these 6 days of Shawaal. Then you have works of more contemporary. Then of those, that the one that we'll be following more so, that the one which is written by one of the students of Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala. So of his student, that will mention that he wrote this thesis that is called Ahkam Siyam Sit Min Shawaal. And the author of this is Sheikh. He's a professor, and also I think he's a part of that is a part of not limited but he's talking about Hiyat Kibar Ulama or Limited Daim. So he's one of those bodies, so one of the more senior bodies of Mashaykh in Saudi, where his name is Sheikh Sami ibn Muhammad Saghir. And when Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah, his masjid that he had, that he left him in charge of the teaching of the masjid, being the one in charge of the education of the masjid in his masjid. So Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah, that he has a masjid. So when he passed away, before he left this particular sheikh to be his khalifa, the one to continue teaching in the masjid as the main teacher in the masjid. So he still continue. So it says now that he have wrote this thesis on this matter. We'll be going through this one more so. Then also you have others. That one, this is called Bulugh Manal fi Ahkam Siyam As-Sit Min Shawwal. That you more take a approach concerning al-fiqhi usuli. So it's more like a fiqhi usuli type of approach. So you have different approaches of those who have written on this topic regarding approaching this particular topic. And then you have also other contemporaries that this also one of a contemporary, one of the Mashaykh Shafi that's in Indonesia, that he wrote Tahrir al-Maqal fi Ahkam Ta'allaq Bisiyam Sit Min Shawwal, and this one is nice. Even though he gave a lot of the more so Shafi and kind of somewhat more mentioned all of the A'immat al-Shafi'iyya and various Masail and also others. So as for the matter and others who have written on this topic, say I have many who have written others. So as for what have been this matter that you find, as for first regarding a hadith that have been narrated regarding this, so also a book that they discuss concerning a hadith waradat fi siyam sit min sit ayyam min shawwal. So you have also those type of work where they gather all the hadith regarding that relates to fasting these days of Shawwal, all the hadith. So of those hadith they mentioned there are 6 main hadith from different Sahaba. For 6 Sahaba who have narrated this matter, that the main hadith of the hadith of, so amongst them you have the hadith of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari al-Khazraji, who's Khalid ibn Yazid. So Khalid ibn Zayd, that who is Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, that is hadith is like the framework, or one of the main hadith. That is hadith mentioned, Man Sama Ramadan, Thumma Atbahu, Sittan min Shawwal, Kasiyam, Kakana Kasiyam, Ad-Dahr, and some narration that will discuss concerning, you have different narration of this hadith. So that other mention كأنما سام السنة. So rather the word ad-dahr, like ad-dahr, will this could mean like a lifetime, and also a difference regarding concerning as-sana, which meaning a year. So so you have that hadith, that is the hadith of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, the hadith in Sahih Muslim. But was to bring concern, but there's some discussion regarding that particular hadith, even though it's in Sahih Muslim, based upon one narrator. So you have a discussion regarding that hadith, where you have 2 criticism of that hadith, one which that relates to the sanad, and the other that relates to the matan of the hadith of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari. But said that on the main hadith that is mentioned, that is quoted, Man Sama Ramadan, the one who fasts Ramadan, Thumma Atba'u, and he follows it up, Sittan, with 6 days, Min Shawwal, Kana Kasiyam Dahr, as if the person has fast for a lifetime. Or some narration mentioned, other narration mentioned in the Nasa'i, that it mentioned فَكَأَنَّمَا صَامَ السَّنَةِ, as if he has fast a year. So you have some discussion regarding that hadith of those who have criticized that hadith. That they mention one, the hadith of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, that they mention regarding, there is a narrator in the hadith that his name is Sa'd ibn Sa'id ibn Qais. Sa'd ibn Sa'id ibn Qais. So they have criticized this person, but we said that no, he have hadith in Sahih Muslim, but he has been criticized. Where some mention that he is somewhat, and they said by way of his hifz, as mentioned by Atim rahimahullah, that they have criticized him based upon his memory, not his adala. So they mention it, so based upon this, some will hadith to be criticized based upon Sa'd ibn Sa'id, but also you find that others that they said they have what we call in Ilm al-Hadith, they have what they call mutaba'at. You have about 3 others who have narrated the hadith side by side with him. His 2 brothers, and also Safwan ibn Sulaim. So he has a brother called Yahya and a brother called Abdul Rabbi, that all of them narrate the same hadith. So they said that, and so he showed the hadith as a basis. And Imam Muslim rahimahullah, that most likely that he saw that the person was credible. And also Imam Bukhari rahimahullah mentioned as in his Shawaid, mentioned him also with others. Now, but it said, yeah, that's one of the criticism. But it says not that criticism is some not enough regarding the hadith being weak. And also they mention a difference regarding, in some narration mention ad-dahr, and some narration mention as-sana. Nam, so they said dahr said could mean, so all my mentioning also linguistically that the word ad-dahr, it could mean a lifetime, or umr, lifetime, or it could mean zaman, qillat, or kathrat. يطلق على zaman, it could mean a time, it could also be used by way of indicating a time. That time could be a long time or a short time. And they said that this hadith also, they mentioned other narration, I mentioned as-sana, that this kind of somewhat it explain, some hadith explaining what is meant by dahr. So the word dahr used meaning a lifetime, but actually meaning in this case it means actually sana, as explained by other narrations. With me? So that's concerning hadithiyah, that can go into some detail. Also another criticism of the hadith, they said the hadith is mawquf. Some narration that I mentioned the hadith that is mawquf upon Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, not upon the Prophet ﷺ. So they said the ones that are marfu, going back to the Prophet ﷺ, they are the most of the hadith or narrations. So it has a basis, and that's the asl. And the mawquf, sahih, that maybe he narrated it on his own without mentioning back to the Prophet ﷺ. So they mentioned that the hadith, the criticism is not legitimate. The criticism is not legitimate. Then we have, that's concerning that one. Then you have the hadith of Thawban. Then we have also the hadith of Jabir. And also the hadith of Jabir that mention من صام رمضان وست من شوال فكأنما صام سنة كله. Then you have other narration of the hadith that goes back to Abu Hurairah. That narration of Abu Hurairah somewhat criticized. In that narration I mentioned من صام رمضان وأتبعه ست من شوال فكأنما صام الدهر كله. So that narration though is under some criticism, as mentioned by Al-Haythami rahimahullah ta'ala in his Zawaid, that فيه من لا يعرف, that there's person inside the narration that we do not know. So the narration of Abu Hurairah is under some criticism, but it's the same meaning of the other narration that are more authentic. Also the fifth narration is that of Ibn Abbas and also Jabir. Again, that they mention in that particular narration, من صام رمضان وأتبعه ستا من شوال صوم السنة كله. That it mentioned regarding concern that من صام رمضان. So that narration in Tabarani, and they mentioned regarding concerning that particular narration also, it's فيه, they said narrator who's somewhat matruk. Nam, that criticism also, so that narration is daif, that goes back to Ibn Abbas and also Jabir regarding that narration. Then the last is narration of Ibn Omar, Abdullah ibn Omar radiallahu anhuma, that the Prophet mentioned من صام رمضان وأتبعه ستا من شوال خرج من ذنوبه كيوم ولدته أمه. That's the narration of Ibn Omar, which is a bit different from the others. When I mentioned that من صام رمضان, the one who fasts Ramadan, then he follows with 6 days of Shawwal, خرج من ذنوبه, as if his sins have been expiated, as if the day he was birthed by his mother. That narration I mentioned, that at-Tabarani is awsat, and that narration is, they mention fi munkar, nakara, and also one of the narrators was Salama ibn Ali Matruk. So it's very weak hadith. Now, so as overall a hadith relating to that discussion with those meanings. That part is clear? That's hadithiyah matter of thing, which is the asas. Now, then we discuss now the fiqhiyah matter of thing. So Sheikh, as we mentioned, Sheikh Sami, hafidhullah ta'ala, that wrote this risala. So of those things that he discussed concerning that, start by discussing concerning the virtue of Sawm Tatawwa. We won't go to that bit. regarding of the different type of siyam. Regarding that, the Prophet ﷺ encouraged regarding a siyam tatawwa, that concerning voluntary fasting outside the compulsory. That is well known. So as for the specific discussion regarding matter that relates to siyam, the 6 days of Shawaal, that's the discussion. So he mentioned regarding first that most who discuss this matter will discuss concerning that the hukum siyam sit min Shawaal. What's the verdict of the ulama, the take of the ulama regarding the hukum of fasting the 6 days of Shawaal? So you mentioned that on this matter, you have qawlan. There's two opinions of the ulama on this matter. The first opinion of fasting these 6 days of Shawaal, of those who mention istihbab, that is something which is mustahab. So you find that of the ulama who take the position fasting these days, 6 days of Shawaal, it is mustahab, and that's the view taken by, he mentioned, the Hanafiya, Madhab Hanafiya, fil Mukhtar, according to the chosen opinion of the ulama of the Hanafiya, also the opinion of the Shafi'iyya, and also the Hanabila, wa qawl al-Malikiyya. So it's the view of the Hanafiya al-Mukhtar, the view of the Shafi'iyya, the Hanabila, and also qawlan li Maliki, and also one of the position of the Malikiyya. And the evidence is the hadith that we have mentioned, the hadith, more so the hadith of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, where the Prophet mentioned, man sama Ramadan thumma atbahu sittan min Shawwal kana ka siyam dahr, and hadith of that nature. So they mentioned that hadith, it mentioned regarding the virtue, and that shows regarding the something which is encouraged, that fasting these days, and also that a person who does so is rewarded immensely, as if is fasting those days as if it is equate to the remaining year or lifetime. So they mentioned regarding what of those who owe that. So we have that that those are the mustahab, they use this hadith that we have mentioned as the base of their opinion, of their view, even that. So that hadith shows that is encouraged, even though it said some criticize the hadith of Abu Ayyub, that it is either mawquf or that it is daif. Then we said, no, we have already covered that matter. We already discussed that matter. So over the hadith is sahih regarding this matter. So it shows that it is something that's that view somewhat take that hadith as, those are hadith as their evidence. The second opinion on this matter, so the Shaykh Hafidullah, that he will mention the opinion, then mention their evidence, or some of their evidence, then mention those who may oppose that view. And why? So those who oppose that view, that will say the hadith is daif of Abu Ayyub. Right? So it says no, that's of their refutation of that opinion. So then the next opinion is those that, the second opinion, al-qawl al-thani, karahiyya siyama, that those that will take the position that is dislike for a person to fast 6 days of Shawwal. Those who say it is dislike to be done. And there are those who have that view, they said is the view of the Madhab al-Malikiyya wa qawl al-Hanafiyya. So some of the Ahnaf takes this opinion that it is disliked, and also is a opinion taken by the of the Madhab of the Malikiyya. And they mentioned that the reason, especially concerning them, we said to know that the Malikiyya and also have taken this view, that they mentioned that there's a statement of Imam Malik rahimahullah, where he have mentioned regarding qal lam ara. So Imam Malik rahimahullah, he mentioned lam ara ahadan min ahli al-ilm wal fiqh yasumuha, that I have not seen, Imam Malik rahimahullah, and he's from Ahli Medina, that he said to know that he said, I haven't seen any of the people of ilm and fiqh fasting these days of Shawwal. With me? So Imam Malik rahimahullah, so he's kind of somewhat, he's stating that during his time, I would say that's the early days, second generation, he didn't see from those who present of the people of ilm fasting these days. So he mentioned, then I mentioned that وَلَمْ يُبْلِغْنِي ذَلِكَ أَنْ أَحَدْ مِنَ السَّلَفِ, and also this have not reached my attention that the Salaf used to do this. وَأَهْلِ الْعِلْمِ يَقْرَعُونَ ذَلِكَ, and the people of ilm, that they dislike this. So that's how we come to it. That's the what have been mentioned by Imam Malik regarding what was happening during his time. That the people of ilm never used to fast these days. So of the reason why they only something which is they mention وَأَنَّ أَهْلَ الْعِلْمِ يَقْرَعُونَ ذَلِكَ. The people of knowledge, they dislike meaning fasting these days. So of the reason why of those who have come to the conclusion, they have used as their dalil. And also they have stated the Prophet that you have a narration that mentioned that he encouraged in those hadith. Then discussed, there's no narration that the Prophet Islam fast these days. Huh? So there's no narration that explain, that kind of somewhat clarify that he did actually fast these days. But it mentioned him encouraging. But nothing mentioned that he actually fasted those days. According to this opinion. With me, Ikhwan? Looking strange. So you have narrations that state that he encouraged fasting these days. Clear? But he did it himself. Yes, so he did it. So yeah, so said Ashura, he encouraged, and also he did it. But in this case, he encouraged it, but there's no mention that he did it. So that's of the thing that they use as their evidence. So it's a general concern that the Shaykh mentioned, going to at the end, that we have clear hadith. So if you have a what's that? Should we see that there's like a contradiction, ta'arud? There's a conflict. The hadith saying one thing, but Imam Malik rahimahullah narrating something in that early years that the Salaf didn't do it. So why the Salaf abandon something like this?
Why we should do that?
Huh?
Why we are fasting?
Hey, so we're trying to get there. So trying now to harmonize between those things. So they mentioned in those cases, then so they mentioned that in this case, since there's a conflict, then precedent is given to what? The hadith. Or did the Salaf knew something that we don't know? Why they did not fast? And is Imam Malik rahimahullah discussing what was in his surrounding? How about other places? Did they do the same thing? So Imam Malik rahimahullah from where? Medina. How about in Kufa and other places? Did they also adopt the same practice? So that becomes of the issue.
Could it be weak, what Imam Malik said? What's narrated?
Hey, so I'm trying to harmonize. You understand? That.
Did he even say that?
Hey, some said that's mentioned. Hey, so that's our next matter. So I said, but that's what is known and established. And Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala. Now, so I think that, do we see that there's a conflict where the Prophet ﷺ has said certain things, but also Imam Malik rahimahullah narrating what's taking place underground? Is there conflict? Now, so which take precedent? How we harmonize? So the ulama mentioned that in the long run that the hadith will be given precedent. Also in other places that they mentioned that Ahmad ibn Mubarak. So they also mentioned that you comes out of those who acted upon this. You have Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Ibn Mubarak, and Shafi'i. So you find that the Salaf who still acted upon it. So it shows that the conclusion is that it is legitimate to fast these days of Shawaal. That's the final conclusion. They mentioned that. So the hukum goes back to it is something which is the first opinion, which is what? Mustahab. Now it is still mustahab. So that this book, so it is regarding concern that that it can somewhat to refute the view of the Hanafi regarding it is makruh. So this of the writing on that discussion. So that's concerning. So you have that discussion between the ulama. Now that the hukum, you have those two opinions. The second thing that he discussed, we're clear on that matter. Next masala. The next that he discussed, hukum siyam sitta min Shawaal liman alayhi siyam fard. To understand, because also with this one to understand, so just clarify because of something that even for myself though came to our attention. So he mentioned hukum siyam sit min Shawaal was the ruling in fasting 6 days of Shawaal. Liman alayhi, for the one upon him, siyam al-fard, the one upon him that he has days to make up of siyam al-fard. Now, bear that in mind, and what he discussed after the next masala. The next masala that he discussed Hey, so bear that in mind, I will come to the next one, right? So this one, what is intended by Siyam al-Fard is, for example, the person who have to make up days, for example, kafara. It is something that, so he has still days that he's missed, that he's making up. He made an oath to fast, so it becomes compulsory for him to do so. So in those cases, are not a person make a vow to fast, so those ones he has to do. So this is fard outside Ramadan. So a person have a compulsory fast that is upon him outside Ramadan, which takes precedent. Does he fulfill those compulsory ones for whatever reasons are that is still upon him, or he fasts the 6 days of Shawaal? Clear? The discussion? So you have that discussion. So he mentioned on this matter that he mentioned regarding concerning that, you have a khilaf between the ulama where concerning حكم التطوع بصيام لمن عليه صيام الفرد الأقوال. So he mentioned different aqwal. Of those who mentioned, it is allowed for a person that he can fast the days of Shawwal before he make up those compulsory fasts. You have your hand up or just move?
So you might have something there, but I'm saying, what about the ability fast if you miss days in Ramadan?
Hey, we'll come to that. We'll come to that, inshallah. So that's what I said. Now, make the distinction with this one and what comes next. So this is concerning the person of general compulsory fast to be made up. But he wants the fast also Shawwal. Should he give precedent to make up those compulsory fasts, or he does because those compulsory fasts, it has no time frame, but Shawwal have a time frame. With me? So which is given precedent? So in this case, they mentioned that it is allowed for a person, the first opinion is allowed for a person, jawaz, for him to fast Shawwal, then make up those compulsory after. Whether in Shawwal or after Shawwal. Clear? So that's of the opinion of those of that view. They mention Al-Hanafiya, or Riwayat Al-Ahmad ibn Hanbal. So also Imam Ahmad rahimahullah al-Riwaya, wa huwa al-Mikhtar, and he said no, that the opinion of Ibn Uthaymeen is Sheikh. So he mentioned the opinion of Ibn Uthaymeen that he mentioned here, that is inclined towards that view. Then he mentioned regarding concern that the evidence for this, we won't mention at some point, we'll mention all the evidence at times. That's some of the main ones because of time factor. Then he mentioned the hadith of Aisha, of those who take this opinion, they said the hadith that mentioned that she said, قالت كان يكون علي صوم, that upon her was siyam, to be made up. Min Ramadan, from Ramadan. فما أستطيع, but I was unable, meaning she was unable, أن أقضيه, I was unable to make up those missed days of إلا في Shaban, until Shaban. That was months later. With me? So that Aisha anha, she does not mention her situation during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, that she had days to be made up from Ramadan, as with most ladies in a lot of cases. So that I was unable to do, and she was a young lady. Now she said I was unable because I mentioned for reasons until I had to delay it until Shaban. So it came later on. Then so they said no, it shows the permissibility. For the person who says that it would be, so they see it as for her to that most likely then is a possibility she fasts Shawwal and delay those days of Ramadan until after. Now, according to how they understand this hadith. But those who rebut that opinion regarding concerning the hadith of Aisha, they mention that as she mentioned, فَمَا أَسْتَطِيعُ أَنْ أَقْضِيَهُ إِلَّا فِي شَعْبَانِ, it showed that no, she was busy with things. So it wasn't that she did out of, so because of other factors, she had like legitimate reasons why she delayed it. So they mentioned, so it shows that she may not have fasted those days of Shawwal. but that of those who say it is allowed. The second opinion said Jawaz, it's allowed to do Shawaal and make up those other compulsory fasts later. They mention Jawaz mal Karahiyah. It is allowed but is disliked. And of those who have this opinion, they mention Mathab al-Malikiyah wa Shafi'iyah wa Ikhtiyar Shaykhuna Abdul Aziz bin Baz, and also the view taken by Shaykh bin Baz, of contemporaries, of recent. So bin Baz rahimullah is of the second opinion that it is get me a water. You sure? Jazakallah. Then you have so the second opinion that we have the Malikiyah, Shafi'iyah, and also of recent contemporaries, Shaykh bin Baz rahimahullah ta'ala. And like some mentions that it is dislike, where they see that a person should give precedence to the compulsory over the nafila. The general meaning that yes, it's allowed, but it is preferred for the person to give precedence to those things which is wajib. Because the one which is wajib should be given precedent, then do the nafila or tatawwa after. So they say it is allowed but disliked. According to that, a second opinion. The third opinion, tahrim. Wa adam as-saha. The third opinion, that it is not allowed, is haram for the person to fast Shawaal if he has compulsory fast still to be made up. And if he was to do so, fast in the day of Shawaal, it is not valid. It is tahrim wa adam as-saha. So it is not allowed, and the person, it is not valid if it was to be done. And I mentioned that's the method of the Hanabila. That's the position taken by the Hanabila. And they mentioned regarding concerning the hadith, the Prophet that I mentioned regarding concerning that regarding I mentioned that فقال من تقرب إلي عبدي or ما تقرب إلي عبدي, that my servant doesn't get close to me بشيء أحب إلي مما افترض عليه, except for something that is compulsory upon him. Then it mentioned وما زال عبدي يتقرب إلي بالنوافل, and that he continued to get closer to me by doing the nawafil. So you see that the hadith, it gives precedent to the compulsory, and the person doesn't go to the nafila until he has fulfilled the compulsory. So you see that the compulsory takes precedent, and you are not allowed to go to something which is nafila, meaning something which is voluntary, until you have fulfilled what is required, which is the compulsory. So I said the person haven't done the compulsory and you have done the nafila, the voluntary, then that is not valid and not a valid act according to that opinion. And they use hadith and others. That they mention also a hadith of Abu Hurairah anhu, the Prophet mentioned concerning man sama tatawwa, that the one who fasts a voluntary salat, man sam, the one who fasts a voluntary Sawm, wa alayhi min Ramadan, and upon him Ramadan shay, upon him of something of Ramadan, lam yaqdi, and he hasn't fulfilled it, فإنه لا يتقبل منه حتى يصوم, then it will not be accepted from him until he has done its compulsory. Now that hadith in the Ahmad wa Tabarani fi al-Awsat, but I mentioned hadith daif. That hadith is daif. Nam, that فيه من فيه ضعف ibn Lahiya, and also فيه يعني so hadith is criticized. So you have that those opinion on the matter. The Shaykh overall, that his opinion that he mentioned, that al-qawl raji' wallahu alam huwa qawl al-awwal. So what's the qawl al-awwal? So according to the Shaykh, he mentioned that the qawl that is more correct is qawl al-awwal, which is what? Jawaz. Now so you have Jawaz mal karaha, and tahrim. So he's more inclined towards the first opinion. So the person who have old compulsory salat or compulsory siyam upon him, that is allowed for reasons outside Ramadan, outside of that of Ramadan. making up for Ramadan, that is allowed for him to fast 6 days of Shawaal and before carrying out those compulsory siyam that is on him outside Ramadan. And as he used the word outside Ramadan, as he discussed in the next masala that he discusses, which is the one that is he discussed concerning called Hukum Siyam as-Sit min Shawwal liman alayhi qada min Ramadan. That's why the distinction with me. So he discussed Hukum Siyam, fasting, was the ruling in fasting 6 days of Shawwal for upon liman alayhi, for the one upon him, qada, making up min Ramadan, of Ramadan. Clear, ikhwan? So the distinction between both, the one before and this one. So this one is specific about the one who has the one that is making up missed days of Ramadan. So Ramadan of last week, a person missed 5 days. The sister, due to her menstrual cycle, she missed 5 days. Or a person was ill for 3 days. Now, so he has these days to make up of this past Ramadan. This was said past Ramadan. But we have Shawwal now. Is it allowed for him to fast the days of Shawwal, then after fast the days that are missed for Ramadan? With me? So on this matter, you have also a khilaf between the ulama. You have a khilaf between the ulama on this matter. And he mentioned this, qawlan. The first opinion, al-man wa adam as-saha, that of those who hold that in this case, that it is not allowed for a person to fast the days of Shawwal, and if he was to do so, it is not valid until he has fast, make up the missed days of Ramadan. So for example, we said the sister who reasoned valid her cycle, miss X amount of days. According to his view, she's not allowed to fast Shawwal until she have make up those missed days of Ramadan. Or a person who's ill and he has recovered. So he has to make up these days. And for some people, it could be the time slot is somewhat short. The person missed 20 days of Ramadan because he was ill. So you have 20, or for example, you have 25 days to make. He has 25 days to make of Ramadan. He was ill, but now he has recovered. And you have Shawwal, 30, let's say 30 days, 29, 30 days. So if he does those 25 days, you only have 5 days, which is, he still miss. But we're going to discuss that also. So with this opinion, in this opinion, he has to make up the 25 days before he can go to the 6. Clear? So that's concerning how it comes into play. So he said, as for those who take this opinion, it's the matter of the Hanabila, it's the Mukhtar, Ibn Rajab, who's also Hanbali, but also from the Mujtahid, Al-Hanabila, also is the opinion of Sheikh bin Baz rahimahullah. So of contemporary Sheikh bin Baz rahimahullah, and also Ibn Usaymin, that they are of this view. How they have come to that opinion, how they have come to that conclusion. They mention hadith of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, Man sama Ramadan, thumma atba'ahu sit min Shawwal al-hadith. So they said the hadith mentioned Man sama Ramadan. So they mentioned, so they said that how they come to that ruling, the hadith mentioned Man sama Ramadan, the one who has fast Ramadan. And you do not fast Ramadan until you fast all these days. So for you to capture Ramadan, you must have fast, or to be included in this Ramadan, you must have fast all these days, whether in the month of Ramadan or making up what remains of Ramadan. So let's say for the person who mentioned Man Sama Ramadan, for you to have fast Ramadan, either you have made fast during the month of Ramadan, but if you have anything remain of that month, you should have made it up for you to be considered as fast in the month of Ramadan, which is making of your qada. So they use the same hadith according to the wording. Then it mentions thumma atba'hu, then you follow this after. So you have to have completed what is required of you of Ramadan, then do so with these 6 days after, according to his opinion. So that's concerning those who cannot refute that view. That man sama Ramadan, I mean concerning aglab, the one of thoughts most of Ramadan. Or I mentioned man sama Ramadan, that if you were given, the Sharia allows of those to a valid excuse to regarding if you miss certain days, regarding cycle or illness or the likes. So Sharia allows you. So it wasn't, so they mentioned that, so that after those who say that Ramadan meaning regarding, yes, you still consider to be a fast Ramadan if you were giving a valid reason to miss certain days. So that's the response of those. What we just said there, view 1. Then وجه ثاني, then I mentioned the second, which is, or do I have a page missing? The second opinion, we said the first one, that is jaiz. The second opinion, so the second opinion, take up the view that is something which is jaiz. I'm not seeing the second opinion here, but generally concerned, the second opinion is that the person who have a legitimate reason, that is allowed for them. So the menstruating woman, the one who was ill but then recovered, that those people, they are allowed to make up, do the 6th day of Ramadan. They see concerning that making of Ramadan waqt tawassul, that the waqt is somewhat the person have more of a longer time to do so compared to Shawaal. So that in that case, the person, they give precedence to the person, can do Shawaal and then make up what remains of Ramadan after Shawaal. So that's the second opinion. That's the second opinion. As I mentioned, the person that is given concern to a concession by the Sharia for them to legitimately miss certain days. So they're still considered to have done their Ramadan based upon the guidelines outlined in the Sharia. That certain days were missed because they have a valid excuse given by the Sharia. So the days that are missed, that is somewhat can be made up at any point, and they do not have to do that before, that it is not a must, that they are allowed to do Shawaal, then do Ramadan, those missed days after Ramadan. So those are the aqwal of the ulama. Then the author here, he mentioned that he is more inclined towards qawl al-awwal. The Shaykh is more inclined towards qawl al-awwal. What's qawl al-awwal? La. La.
Yes, the first of Ramadan first.
So the first comes that man. So the first opinion is?
Finish off Ramadan, make up the days of Ramadan first.
So the first opinion, man, wa adam al-sihr, concerned the person is not allowed to do Shawaal until he has make up the missed days of Ramadan. You with me? Everyone? So I said, don't mix up with the first. So that's concerned the first opinion. So he's more inclined towards the first opinion, which is that the one who has legitimate reason to have missed certain days of Ramadan, that even in that case, it's upon them to make up those missed days of Ramadan before they can go ahead and do the 6 days of Shawaal. So for example, that a woman, she makes 6 days of Ramadan because of her cycle, or a person was ill for 6 days of Ramadan, recovered, and then in that case, they said that person, he has to make up those days missed, those days that are missed first before he can fast the 6 days of Shawaal. And if he was to do so, vice mean that he was to fast the 6 days of Shawaal before making up the days missed of Ramadan, that 6 days invalid. That 6 days is invalid. It doesn't count, according to the first opinion. Nam, but it's the author that is more inclined towards that opinion.
So, Sheikh Omar, does he talk about, because you said you're going to talk about it after, does he comment on the fact of if he was to miss, as you said, 25 days of Ramadan, then what should the person do in that situation?
He didn't discuss it, but someone has discussed it.
Okay, right.
Hey, so the second opinion that he mentioned here, sir, so I found it. The second opinion that he mentioned, he says that Sehat al-Siyam, that it's allowed for the person to make up, the person to fast the days of Shawaal, qabla al-qada. That's the second opinion that we have mentioned. Of those who of this opinion, they mention the madhab al-Hanafi, Maliki, and also, or they say qawl al-Malikiyya, some of the Malikiyya, and also the Shafi'iyya. Some of the Hanabila is of this opinion. And they mention of the Anabila that is more inclined towards this view. They mentioned Ibn Mufli in his book Al-Furu' and also Insaf, that they are more inclined towards that view. But that's the second opinion on this matter. Then the next thing that they discuss, we might go through some of those things. So if a matter that is discussed, where I read it, that a matter was discussed, they mentioned, we're discussing about the person who missed certain days. So a person who was, so in the next case, a person who didn't fast in Ramadan, missed certain days without a valid reason. With me? So a person who missed out on certain days of Ramadan without a valid reason. Nam? So in that case, then that person, before he can fast Shawwal, he must make up those days. Even though the khilaf between the ulama, the person who miss the days of Ramadan without a legitimate reason, some all that is fasting that he cannot make up ever, such as Ibn Hazm. He doesn't make up, and if he makes up, it doesn't count. That Ibn Hazm, somewhat of a very strong view on that matter. But Jumhur of the ulama consider a person who, even that may miss a day in Ramadan without a valid reason, he still has to make it up. Example. I don't want to give an example.
Someone missed the horse, it's like I'm not fasting.
Hey, it's okay, go with that one. So a person that missed suhoor, and said, look, I missed suhoor, so you know what? I'm not going to fast. Then in that case, they understand that that the person have to make it up after. So in this case, so making up after, that person said he must make up those days that he missed without a valid reason before he can fast the days of Shawwal. Then of the matter that you somewhat, they discuss a matter regarding concern that, for example, a person who, again, they were unable to fast for legitimate reasons. The person have an illness who is unable to fast. So what's the thing to be done in that case?
It's 3 to 6 months, depending on what illness. Terminally ill? Or...
Terminally ill. He cannot fast. Terminally ill. Legitimate. He has a legitimate reason why he cannot fast at all. Terminally ill. So it's a permanent thing. So he feeds. Al-fidya. So he feeds a person for each day. Ideally in those cases, the person who may have a terminal illness, a valid reason, he cannot fast at all. And he has to feed a person per day. Then it's best to either does it on a daily basis or it does at the end of Ramadan. But not to do everything in one go at the start of Ramadan. You understand? For example, a person A, terminally ill, just said, you know what, Ramadan, I'm going to just give, for example, just whatever way you're going to say, I'm going to feed, call 30 people out and feed them all at the start of Ramadan, the first day of Ramadan. I'm going to have iftar on the first day of Ramadan, invite 30 people, feed all of them, and that will cover for the rest of the month. Then that's not the best way to be doing it. That's not the ideal and the best way. Something is not legitimate. But at the end, because we don't know what may happen regarding the days that remain. The person may not even, you understand? The person may not see through all the days.
But if that's the case, if they wait to the end of Ramadan, then they haven't paid anyone, or they haven't fed anyone.
Because they say ideal for it to be done to see exactly what it is 30, 29, or he does on a daily basis, but not to pre-feed people, in the sense of not to pre-feed people before you know what's going on. That's a side matter, but that is discussed. So back to what we're discussing, what we're saying. So a person have a legitimate reason not to fast. Terminal illness, cannot fast. So what the substitute for him or for that person is that they feed a person for each day. Or a person of an so in that case, then they mentioned that but the person have the intention to know, even though I cannot fast, but I want to do Shawaal. Is that person also to feed 6 persons for the month of Shawaal? Because they have a legitimate reason regarding Ramadan. So does he have a legitimate reason to do the same thing in his case regarding Shawaal? With me? So that's also discussed. Of those who say it is legitimate, some give some legitimacy to it. Because the Sharia regarding something to wajib, as Ramadan give it that concession, is the word consent, no? Concession in Ramadan, then they see it as the same thing applies regarding for these 6 days of Shawwal. Allahu A'lam. But it's something that qawl yani, so it's a qawl that is mentioned by some. So for example, those said, okay, a lady she's pregnant, late pregnancy, or she's pregnant now and still have a young one. You understand? So she knows for several Ramadan she's going to be out. That's use the word, sorry for the word that I use. You understand that she's going to be busy. Right? So will that apply to her? So pregnant, she has still a young one, then this young one will go for a few years. You understand? Then the next couple of years she might be pregnant again. You understand? So in that case, would this apply to a case like this? See the point? Aywa. So moving on to the next matter that he discussed, which is said other thing that I discussed also, they discuss regarding concerning hukum tabiit an-niyya min al-layl fi siyam sit min al-shawwal. So of the issue that I discussed regarding the 6 days of Shawwal, is it for a person that he has to have an intention before, from the night before, in fasting these 6 days? Is having the intention, what's the hukum regarding having an intention to fast these days of Shawwal from the previous night? So on this matter, the ulama have a khilaf, and you have different madha'ib. So of those who mention regarding consider there's thalatha aqwal. There's 3 opinions regarding is the person to have an intention from the previous night in fasting these 6 days of Shawwal. So for each day you have to have an intention from the night before for these 6 days. On this you have the first opinion mentioned wujub at-tabit an-niyya fi an-nafl al-mu'ayyan. So the first opinion that the person that in fasting these 6 particular days he has to have an intention from the night before, because they see it as those siyam that refer to as siyam or as-siyam an-nafila al-mu'ayyana. These fasting these days. So any fast that is either one that you have a hadith that encourage fasting, this kind of voluntary fast, Ashura, what else? Mondays, Thursdays, and those type of fasting, Ashura, they mean because these ones are specified and they have a restricted time that a niyyah must go with it from the night before, because they are nafila muayyana. They are called as the siyam ratiba. They have a time slot for it, and also you have evidence encouraging it. So they're not like the ordinary nafila. A person want to fast, so you have an ordinary nafila. The person chooses to fast on a Tuesday. You get up, you understand, and on Tuesday, okay, I'm going to fast that day. There's nothing in the house, I'm going to just fast that day. So they make a distinction between nafila, muayyan, wa nafila, and mutlaq. The general nafila and those ones that are specific. So they said these ones that are specific, they have a time slot, and also you have a hadith encouraging doing those fasting. Those ones you must have an intention from the night before. So they mentioned of that they mentioned regarding, and that's said the matter of the Zahir Kalam, a Hanabila, Qawl li Shafi'iyya, and also is the view taken by Ibn Usaymin rahimahullah ta'ala. Sheikh Ibn Usaymin also of this opinion. And they mentioned regarding concerning that of the more evidence that they mentioned, so of their evidence they mentioned regarding concern that the matter regarding a hadith regarding concern, all the hadith I mentioned, that with Ramadan you need to have an intention from the night before, as we have discussed in so they mentioned regarding concern those hadith. So of those hadith they mentioned the hadith of Hafsa bint Omar that mentioned man lam yubit as-siyam qabla al-fajr fala siyam lahu. Also the hadith man lam yujma' as-siyam qabla al-fajr fala siyam lahu. But even those are hadith and Hafsa, Aisha, Ibn Omar, that is some discussion regarding them being marfu'ah. That ulama mentioned that all those hadith that they are mawquf, that they go back to the Sahaba, not to the Prophet alayhi salam. So they mentioned those hadith are not the same as the statement of the Prophet alayhi salam, but most of them Sahaba. But those who refute it, even we say the statement of the Sahaba, but their hukum are rough, that they elevate to that as if the Prophet ﷺ said it. So those who take the opinion, they use those as their evidence. Then the second opinion, kind of somewhat what they go with, they mention concerning that they mentioned that siyam and nafila, those type of siyam and nafila, including these ones, that siyam bin niyya min an-nahar mutlaq, the person can have an intention that during the day. So it's not the person have to have the intention from the night before, but it is still a valid intention. The person wants to have his intention in the day or night. So even if the night, the person in the morning, that he didn't have the intention from overnight, but when he got up in the morning, sunrise, that he decided to fast that day, then it is allowed. That's the second opinion. That's the matter of the Hanafiya, Shafi'iyya, and also Riwayah and Ahmed. And the evidence, the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, we mentioned that the Prophet entered upon her, mentioned that yawm, that he came to her, dakhala alayya, the Prophet entered upon Aisha radiallahu anha that particular day, yawm faqal al indakum shay, that you have anything in the house. قال فقلنا, meaning that she says لا. Then she said no, there's nothing in the house. فقال فإني إذن صائم. Then he said no, I was like during the day, early morning. Then he mentioned then I'm going to fast the rest of the day. Then so that they mentioned that so based upon this, that he mentioned that he wasn't fasting, that he came to the house, asked if there was any food in the house. She said no. Then he said okay, then I'll just fast the rest of the day. So they mentioned that he already he made his intention then and there, and it was not the night, the previous night, and was actually in the morning. So it's based upon this, the person can have the intention from in the morning to fast that day. So that's the opinion that they use. That those who refute, though the first opinion mentioned that's not with this matter, that I said that hadith is regarding siyam and nafila al-mutlaqa. It's a general fast. It's not of the specific one that have a reasons, that have a reason. So he came that day. It could be any day. We don't know which day what it does. And decided, okay, because there was no food, nothing in the house, I'll fast. So it's that Sawm, Nafila, Mutlaq. So it's a general fast, not a specific one relating to a specific reason. So they said, then قول الثالث وجوب تبيد النية في الصيام النافلة مطلق. Then those who make a distinction regarding those which is as a reason, that fast on a particular fast as a reason, and those that has no reason. So like a combination of both views, previous views. For those that have a reason, then you must have an intention from the night before. And if it has no reason, a general fast, then you don't need an intention from the night before. So they can combine between both opinions. That's the view of the Malikiyya and also Ibn Hazm, rahimahullah ta'ala, that make that distinction. As for the qawl, al-raja', that the Shaykhi more inclined towards, qawl awwal. What's qawl awwal?
You have to do it overnight.
A. Qawl awwal is more inclined towards qawl awwal. Nam. In this one said, I try to avoid mentioning my opinion or what I agree with her. Said about my opinion. Nam. But we have an opinion on most, but I said it's just to understand the masail. Nam. And from here the evidence that you can choose your opinion as to what you see as the more correct one. The next of the matter that he discussed. So as for the matter regarding whether to fast them, then you have this that he discussed, which is a next burning topic of more contemporary, that matter concerning that fasting immediately after Eid or delayed, then it's called almost concerned now that immediately after Eid is allowed to fast. It's allowed with a person who fasts right after early days of Shawaal, after Eid, or in the middle of Shawaal, or the end, Bab Maftuh. As for those who mention what is better, the early days, but it's somewhat al-masafiyya, in that matter, said that the matter, al-amra wasa. It is something which is open. Whatever the person is comfortable with, then he goes with it. Whether he wants to fast them all, tataba, together, or mutafarriqa, or that they are done scattered in the month of Shawwal, it's allowed. Trying to speed up. Then they discuss regarding, is it me or them? What time is it?
39.
41.
What time is Adhan?
7:39. That one's 42.
What?
42. This one is
Okay. Because they discuss, I think they discuss that, so that's kind of somewhat right too. They discuss concerning that these days of Shawwal, is it specific the person after fast in Shawwal is allowed to fast outside Shawwal? Muharram, Dhul Qiyada. Nam. So you have a discussion between ulama about the right opinion that this fast of Shawwal, as the hadith mentioned, ثُمَّ أَتْبَهُ سِتَّ مِنْ Shawwal. It has to be done in Shawwal. So these 6 days must be within Shawwal, not outside, not after. Even though some give an leniency to after. What time? That one is wrong.
40 now.
2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Okay. Then after this another discussion regarding concern that he mentions that if the person start fasting these days of Shawwal or fasting, is a fast that is as a reason, is allowed for the person to decide just to break that fast. Al-Qat. So I start fast in the morning, then I decide I'm not going to fast the rest of the day. So you have a difference in the ulama. Am I allowed to break my fast that I have started, even though it's not compulsory? It's like the voluntary fast. Am I allowed to break it? Of those who mention if you have a valid reason, then it's allowed. But it is the general mention that it is disliked unless there's a valid reason. So the person may be invited to something, and it's early, you understand, there's a valid reason, it's allowed to break it, but it is disliked if the person has no valid reason. That's the short, summary of it. Then the next matter to discuss regarding concerning that fasting, these days of Shawaal coincided Juma or Accept, Friday or Saturday, if they coincide. So a person might want to do all them in all together, one after another, and it might take
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allah.
And next up, Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam Rasulullah wa ba'd. So next up, those matters are discussed regarding that the Shaykh Hafidullah, that he include, alaikum salam that he include regarding, which is more of a matter of, more of, that he mentioned, Hukum Siyam, Accept Min Shawal, that the ruling in fasting, the 6 days of Shawal, إذا وافق يوم الجمعة أو Accept. If those days, 6 days was to coincide with Friday and or Saturday. So fasting these 6 days, but also one of those days being that actually not that it coincides with Friday or Saturday. Is this allowed or not allowed? So today is what? Friday, or we could say and Saturday, whichever. So for example, a person is doing it 6 days. So he started when was Eid? Sunday. Yes. So the person that said he started because of the situation, he started on Tuesday. So he did two, and he's doing that all consecutive. So he did Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Is he allowed then to continue on Friday and Saturday? Or he has to break? With me? So you have the discussion between the ulama. So overall, the Shaykh mentioned is aqwal al-ulama, that is either disliked to be done, and those who prefer it that. So you have a discussion that we have discussed regarding, you have aqwal regarding the person who said specifying doing a nafila, a voluntary fast on Yawmul Jummah. So you have that one, you understand? So of those who mentioned ideal for it to be done with Friday the day before or the day after. But is allowed to do it on its own. They said if there's a valid reason, then it could be done. But it could be done if there's a reason, but disliked.
A valid reason be, say, for example,
It coincides with,
so it's the last day of Shawaal, for example, he's got one more day to make.
yeah, then it becomes a valid reason. Or for example, so if it's the understand, so it is allowed in that case. Now also the person that is doing all of them consecutive. So it coincides with Friday, Saturday. You understand? He starts a day that's going to end on a Friday. Now, then that's valid. You understand? So it could be done for those reasons. The second opinion, all that's concerned, it is tahrim. It's not allowed at all. Nam, and that's the qawl al-Shafi'iyya or al-Shafi'iyya or Ruwayat Imam Ahmed or Ibn Hazm and of regarding Friday. So that's concerned about the overall that the Shaykh more inclined that he mentioned the third opinion that jawaz min ghayr karahiyya, that is allowed without any type of dislike. So you have different aqwal regarding this matter. That although that not is disliked but allowed, that's the Shafi'iyya and the Hanabila and the Hanafiya, and preferable for it to be done the day before or after, but the person that the day before and after goes along with it. But if it was to be done on its own, they still see it as valid but disliked. It's valid. So the person, for example, that the person is doing consecutive days, one day and miss a day, and the day one day coincide with Friday, then they say it is legitimate. So you have that aqwal. but those who say it's not allowed, and those who say other views. The next matter regarding the Saturday. So regarding concerning Saturday, is it allowed for a person to fast on a Saturday? Nam, that you have different aqwal. So you have those who mentioned that is karahiyah, ifradu, that for the person just to specify Saturday by itself, they'll say it is disliked, but still valid. Is disliked, but still valid. But prefer that he fast the day before or after with it. Nam. Then you have those who say it is completely haram. Those who say it is completely haram, they mention tahrim tatawwa bisawm yawm as-sabt mutlaqan sawa afradu. That means that it's completely haram to do a voluntary fast on yawm as-sabt, whether it coincides whether by itself or with another day before or after, whether it specify that day itself or another, or no reason, whether it coincide with a encouraged fast or not. So for example, for them, even for example, if Yom Ashura was to fast, coincide with Saturday, you're not to be done, according to this opinion. With me? So they said that no voluntary fast should be done. So any fast on Saturday must be compulsory. Any voluntary fast cannot be done on a Saturday. Saturday is out. Whether it coincides with a valid fast, that is a voluntary fast. We said the person doing which other days? Ashura, white days, all of those, no.
Including if you made an oath, for example.
There's no voluntary fast. You understand? So for them, any voluntary fast cannot be done on a Saturday. Now, they said of the view, of the ones who have that view, Shaykh Albani rahimahullah, of contemporary. Now, and he has a dalil, it mentioned that hadith la tasum yawm as-sabt illa ma fima iftura alaykum, that you are not to fast yawm as-sabt except one which is compulsory upon you. Now, as for the old hadith to be authentic, we find that there's a discussion between ulama regarding the authenticity of that hadith, but he ordered to be authentic. But those who criticize the hukm are those who disagree with Shaykh Albani on that ruling that the hadith is not daif, that the hadith is daif. And Allahu alam, that I'm more inclined toward the hadith is not sahih. The hadith is not sahih. Nam. So for that opinion, the hadith has no weight. So either the ulama consider the hadith to be either concerned, like men concerning either hadith, even those who say, some say it is authentic, the hadith mansukh, that it is abrogated. And those the hadith la, in the hadith itself, ittirab, that there's a lot of confusion in the hadith. Ittirab is the word that is used in the hadith, but it's the hadith of some deficiency that makes it daif. And Allahu alam, or the hadith is shads. So you have these different terms that they use concerning to dismiss a hadith. Now, to say the hadith is weighed as daif. And Allahu alam, that seems to be the correct view. So that view, so the person is allowed to fast, yawmul sabt, for voluntary fast, preferably the day before or after, or if be on his own. La haraj, wallahu alam. Time for salat. So those are the most of the things the Shaykh mentioned regarding these matters. Wabillahi tawfiq.